Gordon Smart, it's a pleasure to see you today. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Good to see all the better for seeing you. I'm in
Oh,
Manchester at the moment. The weather's miserable, and I'm about to travel back to London after that. So yeah, it's good to see you and break the day with good company.
oh, thank you very much. Now, I want to chat to you about lots of stuff today, but I thought I'd give some context to anyone that's tuned in. We met about 18 months ago, didn't we? And we instantly hit it off. I'm sure there was a glass of wine involved, but Gordon has amazed me with his career. It's colourful, it's chaotic, it's brilliant, and he's achieved a lot. But also your ability to be so open and honest was something that um, really excited me because you don't see it in a lot of people that are in the public eye. So I really appreciated it. And it felt fitting to have you as part of this first conversation as the Shift series because of that openness, but also because of your role as editor at large at Men's Health. You've talked to a lot of men, so it felt right to have you involved. Would you mind, as a starter, just giving a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
Of course, yeah, no problem at all. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a broadcaster and journalist. I've been doing that for about 27 years now. And I wear quite a few different caps, So the main income really comes from working for the BBC at the moment on radio on BBC Five Live and on Morning Live on BBC One.
Yeah.
I've kind of found myself being the supply teacher. You said in your intro that I had quite a chaotic life. I wish it was less chaotic, but I also thrive on that. I spent most of my career working newspapers, probably 14 years or so, working for News UK. I was the showbiz editor for most of that of the Sun, and then editor of the Scottish Sun when I was 32 to 35. Then in the last year of my career, deputy editor of the Sun before I called time on that. And then since then, sort of the last 9 years. It's been really interesting. I worked in music radio for a while, had some health troubles, which sent me off on a different path. And like everybody else, found myself scrambling during lockdown to keep the lights on.
Mm.
I thought I had everything sorted and life was going in a great direction. But just when you think life's fair, it tells you it's not. So, yeah, it's been pretty punishing, I would say, the last 5 years, but a really interesting career.
The whole purpose of this, Gordon, this whole series is to open a more positive conversation about men and masculinity. There's so
Mhm.
much bad, rubbish press about men who've done it wrong, who are doing naughty things, who are toxic, who behavior that's outdated and is still going on. And it feels like we're surrounded by that at the moment, where a lot of my clients I can see are really finding that getting to them and oppressing them and don't know their place and they're just feeling a bit rotten. They don't know where their place in the workplace, in their lives. And I think they don't really know how they're meant to show up. So this series is really to open those conversations to be far more positive and show great role models, shine a light on the great guys, which is the majority of guys, it's you. And also to make a shift in behavior, encourage really open, honest conversations about your stuff rather than having to keep it all together. So that's why we're here. And I'd like to start, if I may, with quite a biggie, which is, you've spent your career telling stories and interviewing some massive names and also some massive names in the community of Dunblane or Edinburgh, like local guys. You've interviewed a lot of men. How do you think men are at the moment in terms of how they feel their places in the world?
Yeah, well, I see that through different lenses at the moment. So, as a father, I see a lot of it through my 15-year-old son's eyes and what he's contending with, what he's dealing with. And that's challenging. I think I'm very grateful that I was a teenager in the 90s. I don't think I would have enjoyed being a teenager now. When I went home from school, there was no mobile phone keeping me connected to the madness of what I'd left behind at the playground. And I'm very grateful that I had that. When I went out, there was no document of it, just what people had to say in their summary of your behavior that was retold afterwards. Thank God as well, because I was a pretty lively teenager, I think. And I had an older brother and we were both rascals. Um, and I think I wasn't mature enough to have the responsibility of the technology and the platform that my son happens to have. So every time I'm lecturing him and warning him or teaching him or trying to pass on some wisdom, I just think, God, if I was in your shoes, I'd be making a pig's ear of this. So seeing it through his eyes and also what he's subjected to, what he has access to, the ease of what he has access to, that makes me think a lot. It makes me stop. And then professionally, spending so much time on Radio 5 Live in the past 3 years, I had my own show 10 till 1 and had the benefit of doing a thing called the family group chat for an hour every week,
Mhm.
which was great because I got to speak to experts in so many different things from parenting and mobile phones and access to social media to psychologists, psychotherapists to, I don't know, people who are experts in divorce, lawyers, relationship experts, all sorts of brilliant, brilliant minds. Some who've become really dear friends. You know, one example I'd give you is Owen O'Kane, the psychotherapist, who is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. A wonderful man, full of wisdom and experience. So, you know, the short answer to your question is, I don't think it's a great time to be a man, but then what on earth? What kind of man would you be to complain about that, given how good we've had it for such a long time? You know, so any scrutiny on our behaviour is welcome, you know, and listen, nobody's perfect. We're fallible, we make mistakes. But if the scrutiny and I don't know, appraisal we receive for our behaviour, if that makes people behave more appropriately, then fair enough, bring it on. And again, you know what it's like. You can turn the noise off and focus on what really matters, but you can also be completely overwhelmed by noise. But it's your ability to pay attention to it, listen to it, or just completely turn it off. I think that's the difference. And I'm not very good at turning it off.
Okay. Okay. In terms of a man's place in the world, that's a complicated one. And I think the messages that a lot of men are getting is that things are their fault. And we're focusing on the good guys who are trying their best, being allies to everyone and showing up and identifying their own privilege. I think that's where it gets really hard, because they're just doing their best, but feeling that there maybe is nothing back, which is what we're trying to shift here. When we think about the big names you've interviewed, which is so exciting, your black book is bonkers, I imagine. But from David Beckham to Tom Grennan, your pal, to Declan Rice, the big interviews you've done for Men's Health and beyond, these people in the face of it have everything, all the money, all the stuff, everything at the, drop of a hand or whatever the saying is, they get what they want and they've had huge success. But you've been able to show a more vulnerable, more open, honest side of these people in your interviews. How are you seeing men progressing with being a bit more open? And how has that changed from the beginning of your career?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's a real compliment. And it's a really astute observation, I think, that the way we present ourselves has changed spectacularly. You know, when I was starting off in the workplace, it was frowned upon to go to the gym. It was celebrated to go to the pub. You were one of the guys if you could drink more than everybody else, if you could stay up later than everybody else, if you were the last one standing, if you could turn up for football and put in a performance even though you were half cut from the night before, that seemed to give you some kind of credence for some ridiculous reasons. But now it's kind of acknowledged and respected if you look after yourself, if you do what is called as the work, if you invest in yourself and understand a little bit about, you know, your role in society, a role with your family, a role with your friends. If you have the ability to be more vulnerable and show a softer side, I think that's respected, and quite rightly so, because certainly where we come from in Scotland, I think there have been generations of this stiff upper lip and, you know, keeping it to yourself, which doesn't help anybody. I mean, I think it's pretty unanimous, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Unless if you don't share that stuff, it just builds the pressure, and at some point that explodes. So the thing I've noticed is that people are prepared to open up a bit more about their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses and acknowledge that they're not perfect. That all those people you mentioned are incredible people, right? Declan Rice, an incredible athlete, a young father, a good role model, and a leader, but by his own admission, not perfect. You know, he's lived an incredibly privileged and comfortable life. David Beckham, I mean, again, just watch his documentary. He will acknowledge his mistakes. But again, I think the way he leads his life is inspirational to an awful lot of men. And you know, the day I interviewed him, he arrived 45 minutes early for an interview because he
Wow.
wanted to do the school run and pick up his daughter. I mean, the fact that he did it in a Rolls Royce,
Easy.
one of the most beautiful cars, a Cullinan, if you're interested. It
No.
was absolutely incredible. I would want to do the school run if I owned that car. Um, but he was really open about it. And Tom Grennan, I mean, again, Tom, I love Tom. I think he's brilliant because, you know, if anybody was an advocate for mental health, it's him. He has been a naughty boy. He's been a rascal. He hasn't behaved appropriately. He acknowledges it. but he's a young father. He's got himself in amazing physical shape, but he puts the work in on his head because he knows that he'll slip into the darkness if he's not careful and doesn't talk about it and acknowledge the stuff that he's surrounded by. So yeah, all of them bring something to the table. You know, Mark Cavendish, what an incredible guy, like an amazing father, a good husband, but you know, a tricky customer by his own admission.
Yes.
All of these people have brought something fascinating to the conversations, like Ellis Genge, a 30-year-old British and Irish Lions front row, you know, prop forward, you know, people who are probably the epitome of um, unreconstructed tough guys, right? But again, fascinating bloke. Love to spend time with him. But yeah, it's the last 2 years of the radio work in men's health have really made me think and I don't know, challenge myself a little bit, you know, physically, my emotional integrity, vitality, and general integrity, all of that stuff. And it's not easy. I find my 40s really tough, really, really tough. You know, I think your resilience drops, your testosterone levels probably taper a little bit. So things that would bounce off you in the past stick with you, you know, any kind of setbacks hurt a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a challenging time of life, but men definitely are changing from when I started in the 90s and for the better.
Yeah, which is amazing to hear, and I've noticed it too, and can hopefully improve some of the stats we have around serious death and
Yeah,
suicide, burnout, stress,
yeah,
health. But we have a long way to go. Um,
yeah.
in terms of you, then, and you sort of touched upon some of it at the beginning, and just there, you have a busy old life, but from the get-go of your career, it's been non-stop with all the different places you've worked and you've told us about. How do you manage to look after yourself, your mental fitness, your well-being, even your physical health? How are you looking after yourself right now in amongst everything you're doing?
I go through spells of being really good with the fitness. You know, a couple of times in the last few years, probably got myself in a position where I was not carrying enough timber. Like, I got that for me, I was down to about 76 kilograms.
Hmm.
And, you know, my heaviest was probably 86. So it's got a big fluctuation, and that it all depends on work and lifestyle. When you fitness is the hardest thing to get and the easiest thing to lose. It feels brilliant when you've got it, and it feels terrible when you lose it. But the routine in my life has been a struggle because I'm kind of this supply teacher
Hmm.
for all the jobs I do at the moment, and it's rubbish not knowing where you're going to be and when because you can't really plan anything. And I'm also at the most expensive stage of life, financially under more pressure than I've ever been, and journalism's the fees are going down. It's really tough. And again, life is such a veneer. You know, I think people have an assumption that I'm comfortable and doing well, but the hustle is real. Like I am away all the time, and it's a lonely existence. You know, trains, planes, hotels. It's not what it looks like
Yeah.
if you saw the real version. With the question you posed in mind, if I don't have vitality and fitness, everything else is a struggle. Head goes down, you're miserable. The minute I start training and get outside, I feel better.
Mhm.
And I have to put a lot of work in. So, you know, the biggest thing I do to help is to speak to great people. I'm very lucky that I've got some great listeners in my life, you know, really good friends who support me when I'm feeling down. And I'm looking forward to not being such a big burden on them because I'm still definitely in the trenches at the moment. But yeah, what was it Winston Churchill said? When you're going through hell, don't stop. And you know, I'm just, as I've always done, try to work my way out of it. I like being busy, but the balance is wrong. You know, you definitely need stability in the main aspects of your life, or at least one of them. You know, whether that's your career, your family, your relationships. One of them has to be solid. If they're all wobbly, it's a struggle. Life's a struggle, and
Absolutely.
just trying to find those moments of peace and tranquility. The last couple of years, I've not played enough football. I've not played enough golf. I've not done the stuff that I enjoy because I've been chasing and paying the bills, and it's not sustainable. You know, I can feel it. I've been there in my life where I've burnt out. You know, there are particular landmarks in life that I've got to the point where I couldn't cope, couldn't handle it anymore. You know, at the end of my time being the showbiz editor, you know, two young children, going out till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 nights of the week, getting up early, nah, that was too much, nearly burnt out. At the end of my time in newspapers, 2016, the stress, the pressure, all of that, it was too much. And then just before lockdown, losing my voice, getting really ill.
Yeah.
Um, then during lockdown, pretty much losing every source of income I had, terrifying. And now just trying to rebuild from a position of bounce back loans and debt and, emerging from a deep hole, that's all really challenging.
Yeah.
And, I've spent a lot of time looking for people to give me the answers, but ultimately, you have to do it. You have to make the big, bold, difficult, ugly decisions. You have to take the brave pills. You can take as much advice and take as much wisdom from other people as you can, but you know, ultimately, you are the captain of the ship, and that's tough sometimes because you do revert to being a wee boy. I'm very lucky; I had a great upbringing, wonderful, supportive parents, but you suddenly realise you're that person,
It's got real
and
now. Yeah.
yeah, it's on you. Um, and resisting the urge to run away and hide or procrastinate is a challenge.
Yeah. We've all got our survival techniques. It's so interesting. Thank you for being so honest. It's so interesting listening to you because it just reminds me of so many conversations we're having with clients who are top of their game. They're working longest hours. They've been doing it for years, decades and decades, and they have a growing family, maybe aging parents at one end, they're in a sponge in the middle in a sandwich, and they're feeling there's no respite. It's just constant, and they can't take their feet off the hamster wheel because they might crash. And that load of pressure can leave you just it can put you into freeze mode. And so you find a lot of people come to us to say, I am just a bit lost and I'm stuck and the pressure feels like it's going to explode. And it's about goal setting. It's about understanding what matters to me, your football, the important things. Like, how am I going to prioritize that? I need to do all this stuff. But if this carries on and this stuff doesn't happen, what have I got? What am I left with? And what's it going to do to me long term? So it's really interesting listening to you. And no matter what career you have, where it's in showbiz and you're an editor, you're a journalist, you're a broadcaster, you're a sporting hero, you're David Beckham with his fancy car that I know nothing about, you're a janitor, whatever it is, a lot of men I'm speaking to, not every man, but
Mhm.
has this cycle of pressure. And a lot of it, I think it's the provider instinct that's still in our DNA of, a lot of men feel like, well, I need to do that because that's my role as a man, which is now desperately outdated, but they're still feeling that pressure to hold it all together. I don't know if any of that
Yeah.
resonates.
It does, yeah. I think we've mentioned it off this conversation, but I did a 16-week course this year, I think called Man Alive, with some incredible men led by David Miller, an ex judo player, international athlete, incredible man. Another fella, Michael Maisie, best-selling author, one of 15 kids, ended up in Feltham as a young man, was cut down on his cell, tried to kill himself. He's been on, problems with alcohol and substance abuse, and has become one of the most inspirational men I've ever met. Again, a father of two, happily married, helping his whole vocation, his whole thing is to help other men in life. And those guys have been so important to me. And the rest of the guys that they work with, there's another guy, Neil Young, right? He's a yoga teacher now. He looks like he's a second row rugby player, a big guy, and he's an arborist, like he's a tree surgeon. Um, but when he looks in your eyes, he doesn't look in, he looks through you, and he holds you accountable for your behavior and what you're doing in life. And he makes the point. He's like, he's a better father now because he's tackled the issues in his life, and he keeps things really simple. And the happiness he has from just being a good dad and a good husband and being around is inspirational. Another guy, Fro Barnes, he's a brilliant producer, produced some of the Lewis Capaldi stuff, and countless other amazing artists that you'll be aware of. But I'm not betraying any confidence telling some of Fro's story, but he had challenges in his relationship, took the bold move to go his own way, and he's just a wonderful man, full of wisdom, helping others. And the combination of those boys and that course was so beneficial and so helpful.
Yeah.
And again, I've always leaned on role models and people I look up to and respect and admire. I mean, sometimes they can be a little bit puritanical and a bit too perfect for my liking.
No,
Um,
it's perfect. They got their stuff.
yeah, yeah, and listen, they would laugh at me saying that because they're by no means the finished article. But that was really, really valuable for me to spend that time because I think, yeah, a lot of blokes, a lot of men, particularly my age, just, I mean, there are days that there's so much going on. I don't know where to start. And there's so much I want to do that I'd love to invest my time in that I can't invest my time in. But actually, where should my time be invested? It should be invested in my son and my daughter. And Matthew McConaughey's brilliant on this, doesn't he? He talks about, I think it's 16 pillars of life. And if you invest too much in one of them, the other one will begin to tip and everything falls off the table. And I'm just constantly trying to cover the holes in the barrel if I can mix my metaphors anymore. There's
Loving them.
water, there's water leaking on one side, and you just about plug that hole, and another one springs up. So
Yeah.
it is relentless.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one thing I'd say out of all of this, sleep, getting a good kip,
Yeah.
it makes it all the more manageable. And yeah, get some exercise.
Yeah. Wow. I want to ask so many more questions about this 16-week course you did,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to do that off camera. I'm going to have to write a blog on it. You talked about role models there. Tell me who stands out to you right now, even if we don't know who they are, um, as a positive role model for men and for your boy.
Yeah, the one person that I would name check who's been a rock for me in the last probably the last 5 years is a guy, Rory Lawson, the former Scotland rugby captain. We've become really, really good friends. We're colleagues. We work on stuff professionally, but he's such a selfless listener. He would just take everything on board that I'm finding hard and offer encouragement. Um, he's just been a really good friend, and he's got his own stuff, and hopefully it's a balance. And I listen to him, but we're a very similar age, similar background. Grew up not far away. He's a rugby guy. I'm a football guy. He was clearly an incredibly talented rugby player. I wish I was better at football, but he's been really good, and he does executive leadership coaching and things like that. And actually, in lockdown, I was a bit of a guinea pig for some of the people he trained up, and I really enjoy his candor. He's one of those guys. He's a leader of men. When he talks in a group, people stop and they pay attention to him. He's a great orator. He talks beautifully, clever guy. And my I would always say to my son, there's an example of a good man, a good friend, a great athlete. And again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, he's shown me the real value of friendship. And again, on the course, Michael Maisie and David Miller, Neil, Fro, all of those guys, there's a contract that you enter, but they go way beyond that, way beyond that, checking in, making sure you're all right, offering encouragement. And when you get things wrong, they don't judge you. Um, they're just there for you. So they're the main people, and then some people in the public eye that you might be aware of, like Jason Fox from SAS Who Dares Win. Again, Fox has been a good pal.
Yeah.
Um, he's one of those blokes that I know if you phoned at any time, day or night, he would answer and say, "Are you all right?"
Yeah.
Which is valuable. And you're very lucky to have enough people in your life to do that. And my two of my best friends and or three of my best friends on the planet from growing up, Ewan Dowdy, Benji Eady, and a guy Gary Gilfillan. They've all been really good mates.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you have plenty of that a lot of men don't feel they do, which is friendships,
Yeah,
and the loneliness that comes with that. So I'm so glad to hear you have a tight circle and at various points in the world you can go out to them and or in the night. And I hope one thing I hope it's going to shift over the next few decades is that men open up more to each other and have make more
yeah,
friendships.
so true.
I am conscious you are filming, and so I'm going to leave you with one last question. So it's International Men's Day this month, and the whole, this is a great example of a day to celebrate men. It's about raising awareness about men and boys, their well-being, and exhibiting some role models in the world and shouting about them and positive masculinity. If there's one message that you could give the men of the world, your son, anyone that is male, this International Men's Day, what would it be?
Try everything you can to embrace fun and enjoyment and the good things in life. Don't feel guilty about it. They are the times where you charge the batteries that you need for the difficult stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're not making the most of your free time, then everything else feels insurmountable. So to give you the resilience, to give you the energy, to give you the just the general, I don't know, fire in your belly to take on the life challenges that trip you up because they will, right? Speed bumps, they're everywhere, and it's not going to be easy. But I tell you, they're so much easier if you've managed to get stuff off your chest or your pals, or you've gone for a great night out. Don't feel bad about getting home late. Don't punish yourself for it. Be grateful for the fact that you've just made the most of that time because it's special, right? Kicking a ball around, throwing a ball around, whatever it is you choose to do in your spare time, going to the gym, you know, even if you're not into sport, just having that camaraderie and friendship, enjoy those magical moments because everything else is manageable when you can have those times together, those shared moments. There is something magical in that elixir and look for it, lean into it, embrace it, never feel guilty about it, even if it ends in mischief and trouble. Like just remember, those those are the things you'll talk about. Those are the moments you'll remember. I'll give you an example. I caught up with two pals I played football with for years in London recently. They're both from Yorkshire. They're from Hull, and I hadn't seen them for ages. And we've all got kids now, and we seldom see each other. And within my son was with us, right? My 15-year-old son met these boys. He doesn't remember meeting them the first time around because he was too wee. And he just sat giggling at the stories of the mischief of the stuff we'd got up to. Really irresponsible, silly, but brilliant, brilliant times, you know. And having those moments and then also having the nostalgia where you can celebrate those moments together, that never ends.
Yeah.
So, you know, make sure you've got a bank of shared happy memories to help you circumvent the tricky moments in life.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. So many teenage boys will be loving what you just said because they're like, free pass, see you later, off I go. But brilliant advice. And you've been so amazing with humility, kindness, and warmth. Thank you for being you and so open. And yeah, we'll see you very soon.
My privilege. Thank you very much, Caroline. I'll take care and I'll see you soon.